What wonders has he done? What miracles? Like we do every year at the Seder on Pesach, it is fitting at least once a year to focus on and reflect upon the gifts God has granted us and the miracles he has performed for us in the establishment of Medinat Yisrael. A nation is exiled from its land, and over the course of 2 millennia is dispersed to the 4 corners of the world and persecuted in every one of those lands. And 2,000 years after their initial exile, this nation suffers the loss of 6 million people in an act of unprecedented genocide. That such a nation would be able to not only survive, but successfully maintain its identity and sense of nationhood, and return to its homeland to create a state, a safe haven for all Jews, only 3 years later, would certainly necessitate a miracle. And that miracle did occur. The former Rosh Yeshiva, Yeshivat Har Etzion, Rav Yehuda Amital, would often share his perspective on the establishment of the State of Israel. Rav Amital is a Holocaust survivor who shortly after the Holocaust immigrated to Palestine and helped fight in the Haganah and then in Tzahal. Rav Amital comments on the absolute shock and then rejoicing of November 29, 1947, the day on which the United Nations voted on the partition plan. Under this plan, the Jews would receive the Negev and the narrow strip of land which included Tel Aviv, but no Galil, no Lod, no Ashkelon, no Be'er Sheva, and no Yerushalayim. The Arabs would receive most of the remainder of the land. And in order to receive this international backing for the first, albeit small, Jewish state, there was a need for 2/3 of the UN General Assembly to vote in favor of the plan. And this was hardly a likely outcome. This was during the early years of the Cold War, where East and West vied for political power in the world. And therefore, most people assumed that the US and the USSR and their respective allies were sure to fall out on different sides of the issue. The chances of a 2/3 majority vote were slim. Dr. Leo Cohen, one of the delegates to the UN at the time, later told Rav Amital that he walked around that day with a book of Tehillim in his hand. Only a miracle could save us, he thought to himself that day. And indeed, that miracle also occurred. After the partition plan passed and Israel received international support for the foundation of a Jewish state, the military threat from its surrounding neighbors intensified. The Jews living in Eretz Yisrael faced enemies on all sides. By May of 1948, after the state had been declared, there were 6 states, 6, waging war on this fledgling Jewish state. Egypt, Transjordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Lebanon. The entire Jewish population at the time consisted of 650,000 Jews, including women and children. The Jewish army, a mere 45,000 by the most generous estimations. Here you had multiple armies attacking from all sides, fighting an army of 45,000. And who were the members in that army of 45,000? Many of them were former concentration camp inmates. Rav Amital notes that when he enlisted, he was immediately assigned the position of officer. Rav Amital was not a professionally trained military strategist. But they asked a group of soldiers if anyone knew how to shoot a gun, and that much he knew. He raised his hand, and just like that, he was an officer. The fact that he even knew simply how to shoot a gun elevated him so far beyond the typical soldier then, that he was instantly conferred the title of officer. That was the state of the Jewish army. On the day that Medinat Yisrael was declared, Israel had 11 obsolete planes and 0 tanks, not one. It would surely take a miracle of proportions that we only speak about on Hanukkah to survive, let alone to be victorious. Giborim biad chalashim, Rabim b'yad mi'atim, the strong in the hands of the weak, the many in the hands of the few. And that miracle also occurred. And now, 63 years later, the state of Israel is a beacon of light in the Middle East, the lone democracy in a region plagued by dictators and tyranny. The Israeli economy continues to surge ahead, despite the problems of the global economy. Israeli high-tech achievements are legendary and continue to push the frontiers of so many scientific fields. That a state with such humble beginnings could now be so developed, and a leader in these industries would also require a miracle. And that miracle has also occurred. So tonight, we focus on these miracles that have occurred, and on the miracle that continues to occur on a daily basis, the miracle of Medinat Yisrael. We rejoice that we, the people gathered here in this room, have merited to be alive at this time in Jewish history, when once again there is Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. We celebrate the opportunity that we have been given to function not just as a dispersed people, but as a cohesive nation on its land. We reflect tonight on the many generations of Jews before us who yearned for this moment in history. We thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu that every Jew now has a place of refuge, that every Jew now has the fundamental right and opportunity to return home, where he or she will never be denied entry. And most of all, we give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for granting us the privilege to once again dwell in the Eretz Asher Hashem Elokecha Doresh Ota, Tamid Einei Hashem Elokecha Ba, Mireshit Hashana V'yad Acharit Shana, the land which Hashem your God seeks out. The eyes of Hashem your God are constantly directed to it, from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. Zeh hayom asa Adonai, Nagila v'nismechavo. This is the day that Hashem has brought. Let us rejoice and be glad on it. Chag Sameach.